There's an old saying that blood is thicker than water. I believed that for 67 years. Then my own daughter stood in my driveway on a Sunday afternoon, held her hand up flat against my chest like I was a stranger at her door, and told me I was nothing but hired help who forgot to send an invoice. The two children I fed, bathed, and rocked to sleep for the better part of 6 years were standing right behind her at the window. And she pulled the curtain shut. I want you to understand something. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't raise a hand. I just drove home, sat in my truck for 40 minutes, and started keeping a record. Welcome to Dad's Revenge. Come on in, pull up a chair, and stay a while. This is the kind of story that's better shared than kept. If a channel like this means something to you, do me a favor and drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Here, let me back up. My name is Warren. I'm 67 years old, and I live in a 2-bedroom brick house on Delano Avenue in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the same house I've owned since 1994. I spent 31 years installing and repairing HVAC systems, crawling under houses in July heat, and now I mostly rebuild small engines out in my garage, lawnmowers, weed trimmers, the occasional old Briggs & Stratton somebody's grandfather left behind. On Saturdays in spring I coach a little league team, the Delano Cardinals, mostly 7- and 8-year-olds who couldn't hit a beach ball off a tee. I'm not a rich man. I'm not a clever man, either, and I'll be honest with you about my one real flaw. I trust the people I love completely, and I never think to ask them to sign anything. In my whole life I never once believed I'd need a receipt to prove I loved my own family. That belief cost me. I'll tell you that much. My wife, Carol, passed in 2015. Ovarian cancer, 13 months from the diagnosis to the day I held her hand at Erlanger Hospital and felt it go still. After that, it was just me and our daughter, Megan, and Megan was a mess in those years, a bad marriage, a worse divorce, 2 little ones and no floor under her feet. So I did what a father does. I put a floor under her. Let me tell you about those 2 little ones now, because they are the whole heart of this. Lily, my granddaughter, was 2 when Carol died. She's got her grandmother's laugh, this big honking laugh that's way too loud for such a small person, and she used to fall asleep on my chest in the recliner while I watched the Braves lose. Her little brother, Sawyer, came along a year after. Sawyer was born early, spent 11 days in the NICU, and I was the one pacing that hallway at 3 in the morning because Megan couldn't stand to look at all those tubes. I fed that boy his first bottle. I taught him to walk in my backyard, holding both his hands while he wobbled toward the tomato plants. For 6 years, Monday through Friday, those kids got off the bus at my house. I made the grilled cheese. I helped with the homework. I signed the permission slips. Megan worked doubles at the hospital as a billing clerk, and I never asked for a dime, because that's what you do. Without question. Without condition. Without keeping score. Then, in the spring of last year, Megan met a man named Trent. Trent sold cars over at a dealership in Hickson, and he had a smile like a man who practices it in the mirror. Firm handshake. Called me sir and big man and the legend. I didn't like him, and I felt guilty for not liking him, so I kept my mouth shut and I helped pay for their wedding in October. $11,400. I want you to remember that number. I paid for the tent, the caterer, and the DJ, and I stood up at the reception and toasted the both of them, and I meant every word. That's the kind of fool I was. A happy one. It started small, the way these things do. Wednesday, February 5th, 6:15 in the evening. I pulled up to get the kids like always, and the porch light was off and nobody answered the door. I texted Megan. 2 hours later she wrote back, Trent picked them up early. We got it covered now. THX Dad. That was it. THX Dad. I sat in my truck reading those 7 words about 9 times. Then it was a pattern. The next week, they got it covered. The week after, the kids had activities. Little League started up in March and I saved Sawyer a spot on the Cardinals, bought him a glove, a real one, a Rawlings, $42. Sawyer never showed. When I called, Trent answered Megan's phone and told me, real friendly, that they'd decided the kids needed more structure than a garage and a ball field. More structure. From a man who financed a baseboat he can't afford. I laughed about it at the time. I want you to know I don't laugh about it anymore. Here's the thing about how I'm built. I don't explode. I never have. When Carol got sick, I didn't fall apart. I made spreadsheets of her medications and drove her to every appointment. So when my family started closing the door on me 1 inch at a time, I didn't rage. I just watched, and I noticed, and I started to feel something cold settle in behind my ribs. Not anger. Not sadness. Suspicion. Because a mother pulling away from her father is one thing. A mother pulling her children away from the only stable man they've ever known, that's not distance. That's a plan. And plans have authors. The Sunday I told you about, the driveway, that was March 30th. I'd driven over unannounced with an Easter basket for each kid, chocolate and a little kite, because I hadn't seen their faces in 5 weeks and I couldn't take it anymore. Megan met me on the concrete. She wouldn't let me past the truck. And when I asked her, plain, what I had done wrong, she looked at me with a face I didn't recognize and she said, "Nothing, Dad. Things are just different now. You're just the babysitter now, and honestly we don't even need one. Just the babysitter." 6 years. 2,000 and some days. A NICU hallway. A first bottle. Reduced to a word you'd use for a teenager down the street. The curtain moved in the window and I saw Lily's face for half a second before it was gone. I want to tell you about my neighbor Roy now, because Roy is the reason I didn't just curl up and disappear. Roy Buckner lives 2 doors down, 71 years old, 26 years as a Hamilton County Sheriff's deputy before his knees gave out. I was sitting on my back steps that Sunday evening, hadn't moved in an hour, and Roy came over with 2 beers and sat down next to me without a word. I told him the whole thing. And Roy, who does not waste words, set his beer down and said, "Warren, in Tennessee, grandparents have rights. Statute. It's real. You need a lawyer, not a beer." Then he pulled out his phone right there on my back steps and texted me the name of a family law attorney he trusted, a woman named Diane Holloway, downtown on Georgia Avenue. He did that in about 90 seconds. No hand-wringing, no let's wait and see. A decent man, when he sees a wrong, moves. Remember that, because it stands in awful contrast to what came next. If this story is landing with you, if you've ever loved a kid who got taken from you, do us one quick favor. Subscribe, it costs you nothing and it means everything to us. Hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments, because I read them, and stories like mine are a lot more common than any of us want to admit. Now here's where I made my decision. I'll be honest, part of me wanted to march back over there and make a scene. Part of me wanted to call Megan every hour until she picked up. But I buried a wife and I buried both my parents, and grief taught me one thing that rage never will: the loudest man in the room is almost always the one with the weakest hand. So on Tuesday, April 1st, and I appreciate the irony of that date, I put on my good shirt and I sat down across a desk from Diane Holloway. She was maybe 50, sharp eyes, didn't smile much, and I liked her immediately. I told her everything. And she said something I've never forgotten. She said, "Mr. Warren, courts don't run on how much you love those children. They run on what you can prove. So let me ask you, did you keep anything?" And this is the part where being a boring old man finally paid off. Because I keep everything. 31 years in the trades, you learn to document, or you get burned. I had a shoebox and I had my phone, and together they told a story a judge could read. I had 6 years of text messages where Megan asked me to pick up the kids, keep the kids, feed the kids. I had photographs, Sawyer's first birthday at my kitchen table, hundreds of them, all time-stamped. I had the school pickup log where I was listed as the primary emergency contact from 2019 all the way to that February. I had bank records, the wedding, $11,400, the braces, $3,200, 2 years of Lily's dance classes, and every grocery run. I even had the Rawlings glove receipt, $42, Sawyer's name written on the tag in my own handwriting. Diane looked through all of it, slow, page by page, for about 40 minutes. Then she took off her glasses and she said, "You didn't just babysit these children. By the standard this state uses, you functioned as a parent. That matters. That matters a great deal. And she told me the thing I most needed to hear. She said patience would win this, not fury. The angry grandfather loses in family court every single time, she said. The one who shows up calm, organized, and consistent, he's the one the judge believes. So that became my whole strategy. Be the calmest man in every room I walked into. Let the paper do the shouting. Diane filed a petition for grandparent visitation on April 21st. And then she did one more thing, almost as an afterthought. Because there was money tangled up in all this, because I'd co-signed the lease on the house Megan and Trent were renting over in Hickson, back before the wedding when I still thought Trent was family, Diane ran what she called a routine background check on the man my daughter married. Just due diligence, she said. Just being thorough. Stay with me, because this is where the floor fell out from under Trent. Trent had done this before. 2 states, 2 women, the same pattern each time. A charming man moves in, isolates the mother from her family, gets his name on the accounts, and then vanishes when the money's gone. In Georgia, there was a civil judgment against him for $18,000. There were 2 payday loan defaults. And there was a lien he had quietly put in motion against the very house Megan thought was theirs, the house I had co-signed for. He wasn't building a family with my daughter. He was hollowing one out. That cold feeling behind my ribs, the suspicion I couldn't name back in February? It had a name now. And the name was on 3 pages of public record. I did not call Megan to gloat. I want you to hear that. I sat on that information like it was a live wire, and I gave it to Diane, and I let the process do its work, because the process is patient and it does not miss. The payoff didn't come with shouting. It came with a manila envelope and a court date. On June 17, we appeared before a judge in Hamilton County Family Court. Megan was there. Trent was there in a suit that cost more than my truck payment. And Diane laid it all out, 6 years of records, the school logs, the photographs, the money, calm as a Sunday morning. Then she introduced the background report. I watched Trent's face the whole time. I watched the exact moment he realized his 3 pages had followed him to Tennessee. And I watched my daughter turn and look at her husband, really look at him, for what I think was the first time. The judge granted me visitation every other weekend and 1 evening a week, in writing, enforceable. And the lien Trent had set against that house collapsed the second a lawyer with a spine started asking questions. He'd built his whole life on nobody ever checking. Somebody finally checked. Trent was gone within a month. No arrest, nothing dramatic, men like him rarely stay for the consequences. He just slid back under whatever rock he came from, taking his $18,000 debts and his rehearsed smile with him. And the house of cards he'd built between my daughter and me came down with him. The confrontation, if you can even call it that, happened on my own front porch on July 5. Megan came alone. She stood where she'd once blocked me from my grandchildren, only now she was the one who couldn't quite meet my eyes. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know. She said he'd told her I was controlling, that I was trying to take her kids, that cutting me off was the only way to protect her family. And I let her talk, all of it, until she was done. Then I said the only thing I had left to say. I told her I wasn't angry, and I wasn't going to punish her, because I never wanted revenge on my own child. I only wanted the door open. I told her that a man had walked into her life and convinced her that the person who loved her most was the enemy, and that the reason it worked is that I'd never once made her prove her love to me, so it never occurred to me to make her prove his. My voice never rose. It didn't need to. She stood on my porch and cried, and behind her, climbing out of the car, were Lily and Sawyer, running up my walk yelling the only name that ever really mattered to me. Grandpa. Grandpa. Not the babysitter. Grandpa. I don't tell you this story so you'll hate my daughter. I've forgiven her. Trent knew exactly which door to walk through, and the door was standing open because I'd spent my whole life trusting first and asking never. So here's what 6 years and 1 manila envelope taught me, and it's the only thing I'll leave you with. My daughter called me the babysitter, and for 5 long weeks I believed she'd forgotten everything I ever was to those children. But she hadn't forgotten. She'd just been told a story by a better liar. She knew my name. She never knew my patience. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of Dad's Revenge. I'll see you on the next.